This is Zonstar reporting for Atheism TV, and today we have a special interview with our guest here, DPRJones. Came from all the way across the pond for the Reason Rally, and he agreed to sit with us and have a little chat. So, DPR, welcome to the United States.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So it's your first time in the U.S., right?
It is, yes. First time ever.
Okay, great. So what are your impressions of the United States in general? I mean, I know you've only seen a very small slice of it so far, but what, if anything, has really jumped out at you in terms of our culture and our people or language or whatever?
It's the small things that stand out. And the one thing that I've been most impressed with is that when you cross the road, I mean, obviously we have light signals for pedestrians as well, but what we don't have is a little clock that tells you how quick you've got to get over the other side of the road before you get mowed down. In England, all we have is just red and green. So
yep.
That's about. And also, coming into the hotel lobby, I noticed there are free bags to put your umbrellas in. We don't have that in England. So there's two things that stand out.
Wow.
I'd say trivial things, but you know, driving on the wrong side of the road, that's obvious. Wow. But it's as I say, that clock to tell you how quick to get across the road. I love that. I'm going to see if we can get that in England.
Well, and so is there anything about the people in general, anything like that?
They're not as fat as I thought they'd be.
Really?
Yeah, I was expecting everyone to be really obese, but you know, some of them are. But,
oh yeah.
No, I was expecting, particularly here, people to be fairly generous and with welcome and everything, and that's exactly what I found. So far, it's been good fun.
I know that obviously being on YouTube and being in this community, if you want to call it that, of ours, there's a lot that goes on with U.S. politics. Now, obviously, your first time over on this side of the Atlantic, but I know that in other countries, especially, they follow U.S. politics much more closely than the reverse. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts, especially in this election year, anything that jumps out at you about the presidential race or any other aspect of U.S. politics.
The one thing that strikes me is just how appalling a choice Republicans are left with now as to who's going to be the nomination. Who've got Santorum and Romney, Newt Gingrich, and there's another one, isn't there? There are four of them left.
Yes.
And they're all absolutely appalling. Ron Paul. And can you put a cigarette paper between them on policies? I very much doubt it. What I was listening to recently was that it's sort of like generally understood that whilst they're going through the nomination process, they will become more and more extreme. Once they've won the nomination, they then sort of like move slightly further back into the more liberal, electable sort of policies. But no, I think it's a pretty shabby outlook when those are the choices you're going to be left with. Well, one of those four is going to be the candidate, and the ability for money to play such an influential part of it, I think is also a bit disturbing. It doesn't really indicate that it's a particularly democratic system. But look on the bright side, given the fact that all of the Republicans are so appalling, it may help Obama get his second term.
So now on the topic of YouTube itself, obviously that's kind of why we're all here. Well, at least the YouTube community is obviously only a segment of the entire skeptic community, or whatever you want to call that, because you have bloggers and podcasts, and then you've got people that write books and the Dawkins of the world and all that. But in terms of YouTube, there's been a lot of talk on YouTube recently in the YouTube atheist community about the kind of the less there's actually fewer videos being made these days, and people are talking about the death of the atheist YouTube community. It just isn't what it once was. Do you think that's really accurate? And if it is, what do you think would be needed to reverse that?
I don't think it is accurate. I think that some of the people who were better known, such as Phil Hellenes is a classic example. He used to make wonderful videos.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not disappeared altogether, but I can't remember the last video he made.
Right.
but there are others that are coming through that are doing very good videos. They're not as well known or as well subscribed as he is. I don't think that there is the death of atheism on YouTube at all. I think it's probably getting stronger. The difficulty, of course, is getting these smaller channels known. I mean, it is certainly the case that it's much more difficult to do that now, to build up a substantial subscriber base than it was even when I started a few years ago. I mean, if I started now, I would very much doubt I would get to the position I am now in that timescale. But that said, I mean, Concordance, for example, who again made some outstanding videos. I mean, he first started only a couple of years ago, and I think he's well into 20,000. I think he's 26,000 subscribers
I believe
already.
So. Yeah.
And he deserves it, and I think that's encouraging because people who do quality videos like them do normally get the recognition.
Sure.
And there are other small ones. I mean, some of them I've given a shout out for. Fish Head Salad, Living Dinosaur, Brett P. Palmer, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't agree with the idea that YouTube or atheism on YouTube is really in serious decline or is under threat at all now.
Okay, so in you mentioned about how difficult it is now to get recognized. What do you think is behind that? Is it because all of the major, basically all the slots are taken, people only have so much time, and then that's all they can subscribe to, or is it because of YouTube mechanics?
I think it's just a matter of competition. There's so much material out there now. As I say, the position a couple of years ago, it's not what it is now. I mean, and I think YouTube partly is responsible. It is undoubtedly it's tweaked its algorithms to hide new channels and videos that don't make them any money or don't get as many views. And I don't think that they are necessarily directing that at atheist videos. I just think it's the nature of that type of video. It's not something that gets them lots of views. It's not something that gets them lots of money. So I think they have tweaked it to a degree. So you've got that, and you've got the increase in competition. I think those are the elements. And you can go onto YouTube and punch in any subject matter you want, and you're going to get thousands and thousands of videos.
Sure.
With that amount of material, you've got to make an impact very early on in that video, otherwise people are going to switch off. And this is why I think it's quite funny when you see people who have these intricate, wonderful 30-second intros, and you're just waiting and waiting. And 30 seconds, it's like when you've got thousands of other options, it's like, just move on, I can't be bothered with it.
Right.
But it's not, it tends to be the creationists that go in for these sort of long intros and then waffle.
Right.
Nephilim 3 being a classic example. Why these people think they're allocated 15 minutes, I'm going to use all of those 15 minutes somehow. So they spend 3 minutes getting to a point, they spend the next 5 minutes repeating the point, and the last remaining minute repeating what they've said, and it just goes on. It's tedious. But hey, that's the problem.
I think it's interesting, like the whole notion of those kind of intros and those flowery, like emotional. Do you think that's part of the whole appeal to emotion that in some way that they're trying?
No, I think it's an appeal to their arrogance.
Oh, they're on it.
I mean, Venom Fan X is probably the best intro, isn't it? I mean, he's plucked his eyebrows and got his blusher on, and it goes on for about 35 seconds, and that's just purely born out of his ego. Let's not ruin a good conversation by talking about Venom Fan X.
There's sometimes, as I know you've seen before in either videos or in comments, there's sometimes a lot made about the types of targets that we choose to engage in terms of the people that we oppose, how we oppose them, what the format is, whether we're being fair, to them, or whether we're doing something that's intellectually maybe less than honest because we're going after someone like Nephilim Free, who clearly is a couple cards short or whatever whatever you like to say. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that sort of argument, and what are your criteria when you consider who to go against?
We can only deal with the arguments that are presented to us, and the likes of Hicks, not so much now, but in his heyday when he was putting out video after video on a regular basis, then we can deal with those arguments. Nephilim free. I think even he is sort of like slowed up in his output, but we can only deal with the arguments that are presented to us. And the idea that we're picking on just them is, I think, fanciful because, you know, the likes of Potholer 54 are taking on the Lord Monckton. Put in William Lane Craig and you'll get lots of videos critical of him, and he apparently is the ultimate theist apologist. Lots of videos critical of him, and in fact I've got one coming out in about a week's time dealing with him. So I mean, the problem is that it may be seen that we're kicking cripples, but that's because their arguments are crippled.
Right.
I mean, what else can you do but point out just how weak and pathetic their arguments are? And then if in doing so it looks as if you're being strident, arrogant, or unfair or mean, then, you know, so be it. I think a certain degree of caution and discretion should be taken when you're dealing with someone who is clearly not the full shilling. But
Gear Up?
Gear Up's one. I mean, I think Nephilim probably falls within that bracket as well. I think it's a shame, I genuinely do, but there is a difference between sympathy and regard for a person and sympathy and regard for their argument. And I'm afraid if they're insistent on coming out with the same crap arguments, then I think that they're, to a large degree, they are fair game.
They're obviously at Reason Rally. There are lots and lots of very well-known YouTube atheists, and probably none bigger in terms of stature that were actually here than Thunderfoot. And I know Thunderfoot is a friend of yours. And
I've never liked
it. Of course. And the running gag, of course, being, I remember on your channel at one point, I believe your tagline was, "I am not Thunderfoot."
That's right.
Because I think I think there were some people, especially about a year and a half ago or whenever that was, when Thunderfoot kind of changed his attention from Christians to Muslims, and there was a lot of debate about how should they be handled in the same way that we handle Christians, and what is acceptable in terms of the type of rhetoric that we want to present. And it kind of, and really, even to this day, there's a lot of the atheist community that I know is very much split on that question. And I'm sure there were probably some people that were trying to bend your ear that, hey, can you talk to him? Those that were thinking that he was going too far in some respects. So what? Well,
just dealing first with the issue about people confusing the two of us. I think this stems from the days when he didn't, in his early videos, ever show his face, and it was some years afterwards that he first appeared. Now, we both have an English accent, I'm told, and I suspect that was the cause of the confusion.
Not that you know.
Yeah, but I cannot understand it. If you listen to him and you listen to me, whilst we both may have an English accent, we sound totally different. And then afterwards, when he does actually appear, you see that he is horrible, hairy, ugly thing, and I'm stunningly good-looking and handsome. So how people can possibly confuse us now, I don't know. As for giving Thunderfoot advice, some people certainly did say you need to have a word with him, as if I didn't anyway. But Thunder is a law unto himself, you've got to understand this. Quite often, I'll be talking to him, and then a few moments later I'll have a look on YouTube, and he's posted a video. And he's not mentioned it at all during the course of the conversation, so it's not like I'm privy to every video that he posts or anything like that, but occasionally he will take my mind on an issue, or post a video and keep it private so I can have a look at it, or others can have a look at it as well. And on those occasions, he then asks me what I think. I go into detail and explain exactly why what he's saying and the manner in which he's saying it is totally wrong. He listens impatiently and then just totally ignores everything I've said and makes it public anyway.
Right.
normally with, well, I think I'm right. I'm going to post it. I'm going to make it public. So, as I say, he's a law unto himself. His shoulders are broad enough to take any flack.
But I got a few minutes to chat with him one-on-one, and he was actually much more engaging than I actually figured he would be. Although I know I have friends that have met him before and know him that he's much more playful. On YouTube, of course, he tends to be much more serious in his videos, but he's much more playful in real life and just kind of nonchalant and just kind of a kid in a candy store, this kind of thing.
Well, again, I mean, it's one of those things. There's two aspects to that, aren't there? Well, as soon as you point a camera at someone, they normally start behaving differently.
Right.
And you see a different side of the character. You know, where the hell did this come from? And secondly, in relation to videos, as I say, I mean, he's a strong believer as well. If you've got a point to make, you get on and make it. Forget the fancy intros, forget long-windedness, forget repetition. Make your point. And so, for those two reasons, you understand why people looking at him on YouTube videos may sort of like have a different opinion or idea of what he'd be like in real life. But he's fairly harmless in real life.
So, and we were also, before this interview, we were watching someone else very well known in our little community. We were watching Aaron Ra. What is the British saying? Take the piss out of some guy.
No, I think he was just putting forward his point of view.
Very entertaining.
Extraordinarily forceful.
Yes.
Manner, which involved a lot of raised voices and hand movements.
It certainly did. Mustache twiddling.
I have to say, I've never seen him like that before, and it did worry me because I obviously put that footage up on a brief video about the recent rally yesterday, and I did think twice about putting it on because I thought, people are just going to think that all of this was confrontation and arguments between the theists and the atheists, and which wasn't the case at all. All of the footage that I used came from a very small section over to way over on one side of the stage where there were, throughout the day, there was a group of theists putting forward their points, and the idea that they shouldn't be challenged, of course I think is a nonsense. Whether Aaron perhaps went a little bit too far in the manner in which he did, I don't know. Look at it the other way around. What would happen if a group of atheists walked into a church meeting on a Sunday and with banners, which apparently were banned? No one was supposed to have banners, but rules don't apply to these people. Walk into a church with atheist banners or pictures of Richard Dawkins, our own personal god, and whatever. You can imagine the outrage. But a reason rally. These people think it's perfectly right for them to come out, and some of them were incredibly obnoxious. There was one of the preacher people, as I call him, who was just incredibly offensive, and he wasn't interested in any sort of dialogue. He was ranting. He was calling one particular person who was trying to disagree with him. He was saying, he's obviously a homo, I'm not sure he didn't also call him a paedophile or something of it. This is the sort of people you're dealing with. So I don't think really there's too much problem in expressing your views in the way that Aaron did. Yeah. Particularly to Ray Comfort supporters.
Right.
Those two were.
Yeah, they certainly were. The last of the other people that I was thinking of that were here that were very well known, Zomgets Chris, you got to meet her as well, and she was actually invited to speak here at Reason Rally as well, and she came all the way from Romania to do it. So,
they didn't invite me.
Right, I don't know. I'm sure it was an oversight.
And I lied to her as well. And if she watches this, I'm terribly sorry, but I saw her back at the hotel, and I did see her on. I saw her on the screening, but I didn't actually listen to her, anything she said. I knew her speech, and when I saw her in the hotel in the lobby, I said, "Oh, brilliant speech." She said, "Oh, thank you very much." I hadn't heard a word of it. Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. I think obviously a few people have come over from Europe. She came over from Romania, and not only did she speak at the Reason Rally, she's also addressing the American Atheist Conference this afternoon.
Personally, I've been a subscriber of yours for a couple years, and one of my favorite topics that you took on was the 9/11 truthers. I thought that was the way that you went about that. I thought was better than most, and very very complete and insightful. But I was wondering, we all make videos against against groups or ideas of those groups. That things like, for instance, you mentioned Ron Paul earlier, like people to do Ron Paul videos. He has this sort of small, relatively small, but very, very vocal group of supporters, and I think the 9/11 truthers are sort of similar in that they make a lot of noise. So what were your experiences from the 9/11 truthers when you put up those videos? What kind of backlash did you get from the Alex Jones community?
Well, nothing too surprising or too offensive. But what's instructive about the truthers is the same with pretty much any conspiracy theorist and also religious people. And it was predictable. In fact, I think I even made the prediction in the first video of the what was it, 4 or 5 that I did. As soon as you disprove one element of their conspiracy theory, they will not at that point say, "Oh, yeah, you're right. I'll have to cross that off the list." They will just say, "Yeah, but no, but yeah, but what about this?" And I think I predicted that once I disproved that the buildings fell at free fall or nearly free fall speed,
right.
I predicted that the next thing they would move on to is Building 7, and of course they did. So you deal with Building 7, and then they don't stop there. They just say yes, no, but how about whatever? Oh, and then it's the mobile phone calls from one of the flights, and then you deal with that issue. But then they just keep shifting the ground, and never at no point will they ever accept that one of their points is wrong. They just keep moving, and that's the same with the religious. I mean, we were watching, as you referred to, the video of Aaron with the 2 Ray Comfort supports, and that's exactly what they did. If you look at that, he dealt with one point, and instead of them saying, "Oh yes, you're right," it's just what was the issue we looked at specifically was whether Ray Comfort makes money out of what
right.
he does. And, they start off by saying, "No, he doesn't make any money."
Right.
So Aaron says, "Yes, he does. He makes it from this and this and this." And they don't say, "Yes, you're right. Actually, I'm sorry, I was wrong." They say, "Yeah, but that doesn't disprove there's a God." It's like, well, hang on, let's just deal with one issue at a time. But this is what you expect from truthers, and that's what I got. I mean, again, it's one of those things that it may be seen that in that case it's picking on an easy target because these people are quite often not people who necessarily conform with all the social norms, a bit wacky perhaps. But we cannot be criticised of just picking on those, because I made an offer to deal with any point at all that anyone raised, and someone raised the scientific paper that was produced by a number of these people. And I dealt with that, and not only did I deal with it, I sent out an invitation to the authors of that paper to discuss it openly. And I know that they received them because I had an email exchange with one of them. And after a while, this is an academic. He told me that I was obviously closed-minded and I needed to see the broader picture or something, and whatever. And he refused to discuss the matters further with me.
Wow.
So, again, you can only deal with what arguments people put before you. And as I say, I dealt with them. And if somebody still wants to come up with another argument or another piece of evidence that needs to be dealt with, I'm sure I can do it. Because we all know it's a load of bullshit.
Yes, we do. I was wondering, what do you think of the whole concept that we're trying to do of Atheism TV, of creating a channel that has a lot of content about these types of issues that we've been talking about throughout this whole interview? Do you think there's a market for that? Is it something that given that all of these other movements and all these people that put together Reason Rally, and that this is going to be a continuing phenomenon? What do you think of that sort of format?
I think that the cause as a whole is one worth investing time and energy. If the ultimate goal is to try and encourage people to move away from their position of faith to one of atheism, then there is no one single message that's going to do that. There is no one single argument that's going to do it. Every person I've talked to that has gone through that process talks about years of a gradual conversion process, and they occasionally can identify certain things that help them along the way. Normally what they'll say, if they identify a specific issue, like, for example, reading God is not great or something, normally that's at the very end. They'll say that that was the final straw, but there was a lengthy process leading up to that, and in that process all sorts of things can work away on their minds. And I think that everyone, I refer to it as a blunderbuss approach, so you don't know which particular argument is going to hit home, whatever. So you could perfectly legitimate for the likes of Richard Dawkins to write his books and people to be persuaded by them, and people to do videos on YouTube, people like Atheist TV doing a website. The more stuff that's out there, the more chance there is that people come across it, and the more gradual, as I say, it's sort of like a process of erosion. It will erode away at the religious beliefs. So I think there's room for and reason to have as many different types of arguments in different formats and different venues for these types of arguments. So I'm all for it.
Sure.
And similarly with, people should not be discouraged because they happen to have a low subscribe base on YouTube. Everything helps. That's my view.
Great. Well, that's our view of it as well. So we'll keep hammering away both on Atheism TV and on my Zone Star channel. We'll keep plugging away at it. See what happens. So so thanks a lot, DPR, for meeting with us today. And it's been a lot of fun, and keep at it.